Hello, I'm Daniel Thompson. Welcome back on my mind. It's been a while since I shared thoughts or recorded an episode or really talked anything out with you. And there's been reasons for that. Personal reasons, but also just needing time. Time to think. And especially given kind of the significant milestone that January 1st was in my life, which for those that don't know, as of January 1st of this year, I'm 5 years sober from alcohol. So these 5 years, or last 5 years, of sobriety follow roughly at least a strong decade of at least binge drinking slash alcoholism. And when I think about it, when I go back over everything in my head, because obviously, on any anniversary you reflect, I don't think so much about the actions that I did because I spent the first few years kind of dealing with that, which, for the record, there's there's a honeymoon phase to sobriety. And I'm just going to warn anybody who's thinking about it right up front about that. The first few months of your sobriety will feel great. Maybe even the first half year will feel great. You feel new, you feel unburdened, you feel lighter. But here's the thing, depending on what kind of drunk you were, those months of newness, those months of renewal will be filled with joy, followed by the time of reconciliation and dealing with what you did when you weren't this new individual. So, for me personally, I had a wonderful first half year being sober. But that turn happened where suddenly, that excitement over your new state, the fact that you finally quit drinking, the fact that you're finally okay. What happens is that all these people who loved you throughout all of it, who were dealing with anxieties and dealing with angers and frustrations over your choices, once they see you're finally safe, you're not going to die, that you're on recovery, what happens to them sometimes is that these things that have been pent up, these aggressions, these kind of points of resentment, finally have the safety and the opening to come back out and be addressed head on. So you'll deal with that. You're going to have a lot of conversations you don't want to have, but you have to, because the truth is that's the recovery part. Yes, quitting is great. Just completely eliminating your, drug of choice from your life is a wonderful choice. It is a important choice when you found yourself in a place where you can't control something anymore. However, that's only a very, very small part of sobriety. I mean, literally, it's the smallest part. I mean, quitting, you just stopped. But following that comes the part where you have to start rebuilding some of the ruins of the wreckage you left behind. And that takes a long time to do. And the other thing I'll say is that right off the bat, you have to accept just because you get better, or just because maybe you address all the complaints someone had that was in your life before you quit, even if somehow you become the person that other people wanted you to be, that does not mean those people will be part of your life again. It does not mean that you gain anything back. It doesn't turn back the clock. It's not time travel. You still did those things. The consequences are still the same. You just get to be apologetic. You get to show that you understand why and how horrible those things were. And you get to ask for forgiveness. And maybe you get it and maybe you don't. Nobody is obligated to forgive you. And if they want to be part of your life again, great. But if they don't, they don't. You had your shot. And that's the thing sometimes we forget. Because it's such a monumental shift for us, because we're going from being one person to another, and it feels like this old alcoholic is this different life. In fact, I refer to it as my old self because it feels like another person. Even though it feels that way for me, I have to accept that for everyone else, it's all one person. I did the horrible things and I've done the good things. And I can't change that. I will always be both those people. To the people that knew me in both times. But going away from kind of what it's like back to um, those little moments that I think of, I realized that part of what kept me drinking for so long was framing. So I've always been a dramatic individual. Shocking, I know, to everybody who knows me. But no, I was an English major and I read a lot of the old epics and poetry and all these things that are very I don't want to minimize them by calling them flowery because that's too simple, but they're things that spark dreams. They're things that spark ideas that are broken from the chains of reality. And one thing that I found that kind of, I don't know why. I really don't. I couldn't tell you why this became the example that I used for myself in trying to explain how I felt as an alcoholic or why I identified with it. But what always stuck out to me was the devil in Paradise Lost, um, by Milton. And it was two parts, really, or two lines. Um, and one of them was that the one that, the mind is its own place and in itself can make heaven of hell a hell of heaven. The idea about that framing and kind of his whole speech to the other fallen angels about, trying to encourage them or kind of get them to wake back up and still do something. That whole speech, I kind of identify with that. And also this idea of the devil as this thing that could not escape hell because it was something that he literally carried with him wherever he went. He was within himself hell. And I identified with that because when in the worst parts of drinking, I felt just evil, I guess, for lack of a better way of saying it. Like the bad guy in any movie. Like maybe it's because of pop culture and how they framed addicts and everything like that. But once you become an addict, it's suddenly you're a villain automatically with everybody. For some reason, you could literally donate millions to building a hospital in a poor part of a city or someplace that needs it. But the second people find out that you're an addict, you're a villain. And that framing that kind of went into society at the time totally sunk into me. So it was impossible for me to see myself as good because no matter what, being an addict, dealing with what I was dealing with, feeling how I was feeling, having the kind of cravings that I did, I was automatically bad, or that's what society had told me basically all my life. So, how do you desire to be good Or how do you take the steps to be good in a world that is framed in such a way that because you have this affliction or you have this, I guess, disease, you could call it, or you just have this defect, I would call it a defect myself, how it feels to me, that makes you this way. It got to a point where it's like, you just feel screwed. I mean, you feel doomed no matter it's a catch-22 because it's like either I could choose to not be me. This is how I thought at the time, to not be myself, which incorporated drinking and having a good time as I perceived it, not exactly how everybody else experienced it, or to be this kind of half alive thing. Those were kind of the options for me. How I always framed it whenever I thought of quitting, because I never thought I would cross back to the other side. Like, my life, when I thought about the future, was shades of misery. Um, there was never a happy ending, ever. I couldn't dream of one. Either I drank myself to death or I lived sober and wished I was drinking myself to death. Like the like I'm laughing about it, but like that was literally where I was at before I quit. And it was based off all these ideas that like you can't come back. Like you don't get to for some reason. I had this idea that maybe I just completely forgot that redemption was a concept, or maybe I just didn't believe that I deserved it. But I want to point that out around this anniversary of when I quit, this framing, these perceptions, and kind of these background moments that contribute to prolonging addiction because it happens all the time and we don't really notice it. I mean, there are so many people out there that are dealing with addiction right now. Here in Kenosha, as of I think April 2021, there was a study that the county released where we were up 57% in overdose deaths. That's a huge increase. And I believe, based on my own experience, that part of that, I know that we're dealing with, well, just everything. I mean, like, if you could think of all the bad things, like, if there was such a bucket of bad things, I feel like 2020 and 2021, whatever powers maybe just like dipped their hands in it and just chucked it at us. And they're like, oh, that was a pandemic. Whew. Didn't expect to send that one, but whatever. Roll the dice. Like, I feel like that's how it was. But, like, even with the past 2 years that we've had and how hard that is and how traumatic things and difficult things can cause people to relapse, and I understand that, and it happens all the time too, and that's okay. We don't Nobody's perfect. No journey's perfect. We stumble, we fall, we get back up. It happens. But the other part of it is that I don't think we're seeing the need. And not the need as far as, yeah, that person needs to quit. No, stop thinking about the addiction as the affliction. The addiction is a symptom of another wound. It's pointing towards another wound. There is another point of injury for everything you're seeing. Like for me, a lot of my traumas and things were born when I was a kid. I was dealing with major depression by the time I was 9, and I didn't even know what to call it, and nobody took me seriously. It's those things that are really what you're seeing when you see an addict. You're seeing the end product of that going without being addressed, without that finding something to help it heal, whether that be care, love, tenderness, a kind word. You're seeing the product of a world that has made it much easier and much more accessible to get high than to be cared for or cared about or to just have somebody simply wrap their arms around you. And that's the problem. That was always the problem for me. I was always lonely. Alcohol was my source of love and care and way to take a break to heal my wounds. Of course, it became kind of the knife that I kept scarring with myself with over time, but the wound was there and I needed something to address it. And I tried to look for it in other people and I didn't find it there. I tried to look for it in activities and I didn't find it there. I tried to look for it in anywhere and I wasn't finding it. But there was this thing about drinking, how it made everything kind of light and heavy at the same time. It was almost this surreal being on the outside looking in feeling that for some reason that distance made me feel more comfortable. And so in that space, I felt warm and comfort and all these things that you seek to find in other people or in life. You know, we all seek someone who cares about us enough to see us like that and just instinctively wants to hold on to us, embrace us, to reassure us that everything's going to be okay. And while lacking that, we all go for convenience. And in our world, it is so convenient to get drunk or high or what have you that it's insane. We find the love we need in these easily accessible things because we've built a culture where we don't offer it. We really don't. And so we see these people, like I used to be, falling through the cracks and being made these villains and people saying, oh, get a job or oh, just get clean or why would you do that to yourself? It's because they've tried everything. And this is the only thing that makes it not hurt as much. Asking somebody with a mind that is mentally ill or just not right at the moment to fix their own situation is like me trying to tell you to put a fire out with matches. I mean, you're asking them to use the same tool that is afflicting them to fix themselves. That's what you're saying anytime that you tell someone after they tell you, like, I'm really struggling with drugs or alcohol. Whenever you say, well, I hope you get better. Use matches to put out a fire is basically what you're saying. Oh, well, I hope you feel better. Matches to put out a fire. Oh, well, I felt this day matches to put on a fire. Like, really, it's so simple to just tell somebody, listen, I love you or I care about you. And if you need somebody to be around or you just need to go for a walk or anything, let's go do that. Because you see, you have to give people time, your time. People that are wounded in these ways just need to know they're important. They need to know that they're not villains. They need to know they're loved. They need to know that there is a road back. They need to know they're still good, or they can be. That there's hope. And every day we all have the chance to give that to them. We all have the chance to be that final straw that made someone quit. We all have the chance to be that thing that inspired someone to find themselves again. We all have the chance to help someone. What it takes is framing it. What it takes is seeing them right. What it takes is seeing each other as people worthy of being helped. And if you're listening to this and you are someone who struggles with addiction, whether that be alcohol, drugs, or what have you, you are someone worthy of being helped. And if you need help, I encourage you to seek out resources if you don't live in my area. I encourage you to reach out to friends. I encourage you to reach out to strangers. Anybody who seems like they may know what you're going through or cares what you're going through. If you hear this and you want to reach out to me, you can go on ahead and do that. I'm on Facebook and Twitter as @oldfashionednews. You can find me through as the Uptown Observer. You can find me as Daniel and his 3M Saints. You can find me in all sorts of places if I'm the person that you need to find. But find somebody. Don't give up. Don't take the easily accessible things. Because I struggled for 10 years. And then I recovered for 5. And at the beginning of those 5 years, I still carried the hopelessness of the previous 10. I too thought that I would never find something, that I would never be good again, that I would never feel human, really. I would never feel whole. I would never feel alive. But now at the end of the 5 years, I do. I am whole. I don't have cravings. I don't miss it. It was an easier life in ways, but it made everything harder in others. It was only easier for me because I didn't care. I made everybody else deal with my damage. That's why it's easy. I live a much better life now, and I'm much better now because I chose to be better. Because I didn't let the framing of the past and the roadblocks in recovery stop me from getting better, and you can do the same. No matter where you're at, you can always come back. I promise you. As long as you still have a pulse, there's still a chance. So take that chance. Please, if you need to, take that chance. I promise you, it'll be worth it. Beyond what you could have even possibly imagined. Well, that's all for me today. I just want to share that thought with you guys. I wish you a happy new year, and I hope this year is a year that you work and get everything you want. You finally get to be who you want to be. You get to be where you want to be. Doing what you want to be doing. And it can happen. You just gotta try. Take care, my friends. Till next time.